pressures within the student that lead to that inner explosion without which true awakening seldom occurs. However, such extreme measures are by no means universal in Zen. Generally, they are more common in the Rinzai sect than in the Soto, less frequent in the temples than in the monasteries, where the outward discipline is rigid and often harsh. Even so, it is an unusual session that does not resound to shouts of encouragement from the monitors and strikes of the kyosaku. Those who find the use of the kyosaku repugnant are always surprised to learn that not only had the kyosaku been relentlessly used on those who achieved kensho at session but that it had actually been asked for by them. In the Shibogenzo Zumonkey Dogen is quoted by one of his disciples as saying that while in China he heard the following from a Zen master concerning zazen. When I was young I used to visit the heads of various monasteries, and one of them explained to me. Formerly I used to hit sleeping monks so hard that my fist just about broke. Now I am old and weak, so I can't hit them hard enough. Therefore it is difficult to produce good monks. In many monasteries today the superiors do not emphasize sitting strongly enough, and so Buddhism is declining. The more you hit them, the better, he advised me. Quote, ****, that an intense inner energy must be aroused for the tremendous effort of reaching enlightenment. Whether it be instigated from the outside by a stick or from the inside by sheer willpower, has been taught by all great masters. It was underscored by the Buddha himself in an early sutra in these words. One should with clenched teeth, and with tongue pressing on palate, subdue, crush, and overpower the mind by the mind, just as if a strong man, having taken a very weak man by the head or shoulders, were to subdue, crush, and overpower him. Then the bad harmful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion will pass away, disappear. Quote, the fact that there are Rinzai masters in Japan who seldom employ the kyosaku and Soto masters who persistently use it only proves that, in the last analysis, it is the teacher's own personality, together with the training he or she received, which determines one's methods, and not the circumstance of the sect to which the temple belongs. In the person of a genuine master, able to expound the Buddha's Dharma with a conviction born of a profound, personal experience of truth, is to be found the embodiment of Zen's wisdom and authority. Such a teacher is a guide whose spirit-heart-mind is identical with that of all Buddhas and ancestral teachers, separated though they be by centuries in time. Without such people Zen's past is lifeless, its future, powerless to be born. Zen, as a transmission from mind to mind, cherishes pulsating, living truth. Truth in action. Like sound imprisoned in a record or tape. Needing electrical energy and certain devices to reproduce it, so the heart-mind of the Buddha, entombed in the Sutras, needs a living force in the person of an enlightened teacher to recreate it. In Dokusan, the Roshi fulfills the dual roles traditionally ascribed to a father and a mother. Sometimes being the strict, reproving father who prods and chastens, and at other times the gentle, loving mother who comforts and encourages. When students slacken their efforts they are coaxed or goaded, when they display pride they are rebuked. And conversely, when they are assailed by doubt or driven to despair they are encouraged and uplifted. An accomplished Zen teacher thus combines stern detachment with warm concern, flexibility, and an egolessness that can never be mistaken for weakness or flabbiness, in addition to self-confidence and a commanding air. Because the teacher's words are charged with the force and immediacy of a liberated personality. These words have the power to rejuvenate a student's flagging spirit and reinvigorate her or his quest for enlightenment despite pain, frustration, or temporary boredom. But what the student responds to most keenly is the visible evidence of the teacher's liberated mind. The childlike spontaneity, the radiance, the heartfelt concern. Novices who watch their 78-year-old teacher demonstrate a koan with dazzling swiftness and total involvement, and who observe the flowing, effortless grace with which such a one relates to every situation and to all individuals, know that they are seeing one of the finest products of a unique system of mind and character development, and are bound to say to themselves in moments of despair, if through the practice of Zen I can learn to experience life with the same immediacy and awareness, no price will be too high to pay. Quote, all the Zen master's unique skills and compassion come into full play once he senses that the student's mind is ripe, that is, barren of discriminating thoughts and clearly aware. In other words, in a state of absolute oneness. Revealed variously in how the student strikes the dokusan bell, walks into the dokusan room, performs prostrations, and the way the student looks and acts during dokusan. In a variety of ways the teacher will prod and nudge this mind into making its own ultimate leap to awakening. Up to this point the teacher's main effort has been directed toward cajoling and inspiring students to apply themselves with energy and single-mindedness, and not to give way to weariness or despondency. But now he takes another tack. He shoots sharp questions at the student, demanding instantaneous answers, or he may suddenly jab the student with his baton, or pointedly slam at the mat, all in an effort to pry apart the student's delusive mind. In their effort on the mind of the student, these prods of the teacher are like darts of rain on parched soil or shafts of light in a dark room. And they serve to advance one's mind to the next critical point, the stage where a student feels encased in a block of ice, or immured in a crystal palace. Now one virtually sees the truth, but still cannot break out and take hold of it. The student knows that the Roshi is no more able to predict the precise moment of awakening than to bestow satori on her or him. Nor can students themselves do any more than strive with their whole being to exhaust their thinking and reach a state of infant-like no-mindedness. Yet somehow the final breakthrough, the sudden, decisive somersault of the mind betokening enlightenment, must occur. At this crucial juncture the temptation, always potential, to anticipate when awakening, like a bolt from the blue, will take place, for better or worse, becomes irresistible. It is the last desperate maneuver of the retreating ego to disrupt the concentrated mind, plague it with thoughts, and arrest the ultimate leap, signifying complete and total self-abandonment to freedom. The teacher, aware that the student's mind can be jolted into making this leap by a blow, a phrase, or some sound only if it is empty, will take pains to point out this temptation, cautioning the student not to fall prey to the allurements of the ego. Enlightenment can take place anywhere, not alone in the dokusan room. Indeed, a number of students experience it while listening to the teacher's formal commentary. Their mind fastens onto a particular phrase which they may have heard from the Roshi innumerable times but which now, because the mind is ripe, assumes a fresh and startling significance, serving as the spark to set off the inner explosion heralding the opening of the mind's eye. Some have come to awakening on a train or bus on their way home from session. Usually, but not always, Kensho follows a period of intense concentration and absorption. In view of the foregoing, the intriguing words with which many koans or mondo conclude, "With this the monk suddenly came to enlightenment," or, "Then the monk's mind's eye was opened," will be seen to be less imaginary than at first supposed. Puzzled students frequently ask, how is it possible to achieve satori as quickly and easily as these koans would have one believe? What is important to observe here is that the master's crucial phrase or blow that broke open the disciple's deluded mind was effective only because it came at a time when the latter's mind was ripe. for this type of stimulus, and that this ripeness doubtlessly was the outcome of a long period of zazen and a number of dokusan with the master. In other words, koans in their formulation reveal the precipitating circumstances only. They make no mention of the years of relentless, anxious search for truth which led to this crowning experience. The proof of the student's awakening lies in the ability to respond instantly in a live way to questions that demand a concrete demonstration of the spirit of his or her koan. What convinces the teacher are not merely the student's words or gestures or silence, but the conviction and certainty informing them. That is, the comprehending look in the eye, the decisiveness of the tone of voice, and the spontaneity, freedom, and thoroughness of the gestures and movements themselves. Thus it is possible for two different persons, one just enlightened and the other not yet, to respond with identical words and gestures at dokusan, and for the teacher to accept the responses of the one and reject those of the other. The teacher's acceptance of the student's demonstration is tacit confirmation that the student has had a genuine awakening, even though it be shallow as many first experiences are. Where Zen differs radically from other Buddhist disciplines is precisely in this insistence that the student demonstrate a clear understanding, beyond all understanding, and not merely verbalize about it. What Zen values are expressive gestures, movements, and phrases which spontaneously issue from the deepest level of the total being, and not arid explanations, however subtle. An experienced teacher can determine with a single question, or if the experience is profound, by merely a glance, the fact of a person's enlightenment. But by requiring her or him to submit to testing, the teacher is able to establish, to the students as well as to his own satisfaction, the depth and limits of the awakening. It is frequently claimed that genuine enlightenment ought to be self-validating and therefore no need for testing should arise. But self-deception is as strong here as in other realms of human behavior, even stronger perhaps because of the very nature of enlightenment. It is all too easy for a novice to mistake visions, trances, hallucinations, insights, revelations, ecstasies, or even mental serenity for kensho. The oceanic feeling experienced by certain types of neurotics has likewise been confused with enlightenment, since it conveys a sense of oneness with the universe. For all these reasons, and especially because the danger to the personality resulting from such self-deception is real, Zen teaching has always insisted that kensho be tested and confirmed by a master, whose own enlightenment has, in turn, been sanctioned by an enlightened master. If it is possible to deceive oneself about kensho, it is equally possible to experience kensho and not equate it with awakening. Yasutani Roshi relates the story of one of his disciples living in the southern part of Japan whom he saw once a year at session. In the interval between the Roshi's yearly visits, this man had had an inner realization. But because he had not concomitantly had an emotional upheaval followed by tears of joy, he did not believe that what he had perceived could be kensho. The Roshi, upon questioning him in dokusan, felt that his disciple's perception and inner understanding were such as to warrant testing, and he thereupon propounded several test questions to him. To this man's surprise, he found that he could make full and proper response, and the Roshi confirmed his realization. Though admittedly shallow, the kensho was nonetheless real. It should be observed here that the nature of the reaction to one's own enlightenment depends not only on the depth of the enlightenment itself but also on one's emotional and mental makeup. This kind of testing needs to be distinguished from the testing referred to as Dharma dueling, which anciently took place among Zen monks in China and in Japan up until about the time of Hakuin, some 200 years ago. Monks and laypeople of varying degrees of spiritual strength would travel about the country in a spiritual pilgrimage. searching for Zen masters and deeply enlightened monks against whom they could pit the Dharma skill as a means of deepening and rounding out their own enlightenment, and at the same time developing teaching techniques through testing the spiritual strength of the adversary. The verbal thrusts and counterthrusts that constituted these contests were later written down and compiled into collections of koans which are still widely used by Zen students in Japan. With the passing of one's first koan, the student enters a new phase of dokusan. The tense and intense striving, alternating with moods of